I spent a month trying to turn AI into my second brain. The idea is everywhere right now. You dump everything into one place, all your notes, your links, your random thoughts at 2 in the morning, and the AI recalls it all, connects ideas you forgot you had, and basically thinks alongside you. I went all in on it. I took it seriously, and the result genuinely surprised me. Not because it was a disaster, but because of what actually worked, what quietly failed, and the thing I had to admit about myself that I did not expect to find. I am going to walk you through the whole experiment, honest, no hype. The promise that put me in. The pitch for an AI second brain is pretty seductive if you spend any time with notes. The problem it claims to solve is real. Most people, me included, take notes and then never look at them again. You write something down, feel like you captured it, and then it disappears into a folder you open maybe once a year. The AI second brain idea says that is because retrieval is broken. If you could just ask your notes a question in plain language and get a real answer, you would actually use them. And beyond retrieval, the idea is that the AI spots connections between things you wrote months apart, surfaces a note from 3 weeks ago that is directly relevant to something you are thinking about today, and essentially acts as a memory layer you do not have to manually tend. I had a lot of notes from a lot of different places: messy voice memos, half-finished drafts, random saved articles, browser bookmarks, things I had typed on my phone at odd hours. The pitch was that you bring all of that together and suddenly it becomes useful. I wanted that to be true. So I ran the experiment. What I actually set up. I want to be clear about what I actually did, because vague promises are easy to chase and harder to test. I spent about a week moving my notes into a setup that gave an AI model access to them. Everything in one folder: text files, cleaned up voice memo transcripts, short notes, longer drafts, saved ideas. The notes were messy, which was intentional. I did not want to tidy them up first, because the whole point of the second brain idea is that it is supposed to handle raw, imperfect input. I kept writing new things in the same way I always had, and whenever I wanted to think through something or recall something, I went to the AI first, instead of searching manually. I ran this for about 4 weeks before drawing any conclusions. The setup was not free, it used a model I pay for, and that is worth naming because no serious setup like this runs without some cost attached. But the cost was not the problem. The results were more interesting than that. Butler vom Enschtripitam placed Vanner van in de Minions, Nini Siplin Peter Mandins, Bunkren van Vanomythicans Kesigi. The first thing that genuinely worked, and worked better than I expected, was just searching my own notes in plain language. I would ask something like, what did I think about X 3 weeks ago? Or do I have any notes about Y? And it would pull the relevant bit out. That sounds small, but for me it was actually meaningful. I have a bad habit of writing something, losing it, and then rewriting a slightly worse version of the same thought a month later. The AI search caught several of those moments. It found things I had completely forgotten I wrote. It did not always find everything relevant, but it found more than I would have found scrolling manually. That alone was useful, not transformative, but genuinely useful. The plain language access lowered the retrieval friction enough that I actually used my notes more. If that were the only thing it did, it would have been a net positive. What genuinely worked: summarizing messy notes. The second thing that held up was summarizing. I have a bad writing habit where I take notes as a long stream of consciousness and then never distill them. The AI was actually good at pulling a readable summary out of that mess. I would paste in a long rambling note and ask for the main points. What came back was not always perfect, but it was faster and cleaner than doing it myself, and it almost always caught the core idea even when the surrounding text was incoherent. This one surprised me a little because I had assumed summarizing your own thoughts would feel redundant. It did not. It felt like having a patient reader who got through the mess so you did not have to. I used this regularly by the second week and kept using it after the experiment ended. What genuinely worked? Surfacing forgotten things. The third thing that worked was one I had not fully anticipated. Occasionally, when I was asking about one topic, the AI would pull up a note from a completely different context that turned out to be directly relevant. Not always, not even often, but it happened enough times that it felt like the promise was at least partially real. The connections it surfaced were not always the ones I would have made consciously, and a few of them genuinely helped me think through something more completely. I want to be honest that this happened maybe 6 or 7 times over the whole month, not every day. But those 6 or 7 moments were the most interesting part of the experiment. They showed what the upside looks like when the thing actually works right. A connection you did not know to look for, showing up, because the AI matched something in two separate nodes is a genuinely different kind of usefulness than a search engine. A search engine needs you to know what to look for. This did not. What did not work? It sometimes invented connections. Here is where I have to be just as honest about the failures. The most uncomfortable discovery was that the AI sometimes invented connections that were not there. I would ask whether I had written about a particular idea, and it would tell me I had, and give me a summary of notes that, when I checked, either did not quite say what it claimed or, in a few cases, were essentially hallucinated. It pulled a real note and then described it as saying something slightly different. I caught these because I went back and checked, but the failure mode scared me, not because it was frequent, but because it was confident. The AI did not say, "I am not sure about this," or "I might be misremembering." It said it the same way it said everything else. If I had been trusting it without checking, I would have been building on wrong foundations without knowing it. For a second brain, that is a pretty serious flaw. The whole point is to extend your memory. A memory that invents things with full confidence is worse than no memory at all. What did not work? Feeding it everything was real frictions. The second failure was not dramatic. It was just frictions. To make this work, you have to actually get your notes into the system. That means formatting them, moving them, naming them, and keeping up with new ones as they come in. I had underestimated how much of my note-taking happens in inconvenient moments, on my phone walking somewhere, in a voice memo while I am cooking, in a quick message I sent myself. Getting all of that into a usable form for the AI was not impossible, but it was a steady tax on my time. Every session of useful AI recall was preceded by some amount of note housekeeping, and the promise of the second brain is that it frees you from that kind of manual work. In practice, it shifted the work rather than eliminated it. I was not manually searching notes anymore. I was manually maintaining the system that let AI search them. The total work was roughly the same. The uncomfortable lesson: thinking is not optional. Here is the thing I did not expect to find, and it is the part that has stuck with me the most. At a few points in the month, I caught myself waiting for the AI to tell me what I thought. I would have a vague sense of having worked through an idea before, and instead of sitting with it and reconstructing the thinking, I would just ask the AI. Sometimes it helped. But sometimes what I actually needed was to do the thinking again, not because I had not done it before, but because doing the thinking again was the thing that made it stick and develop. Repeating a line of reasoning is not a waste of time if it means you actually own the conclusions. Outsourcing recall is one thing. Outsourcing the actual work of thinking is something else. I had not noticed how much I had started to blur those two things together. A second brain is sold as a memory tool. It is easy to accidentally use it as a thinking avoidance tool. The uncomfortable lesson is that a good note-taking habit and a consistent writing practice are not things a tool can replace. The tool can make the notes easier to find. It cannot make the thinking happen if you skip it. And if you are using it to avoid the blank page rather than to work through the blank page, the notes you end up with will be shallower than the ones you had before. The lighter version I actually kept. After the experiment, I did not throw out the whole setup. I kept a lighter version. I kept the plain language search over my notes because that part genuinely worked. I kept summarizing long messy drafts because that saved real time. I dropped the idea of feeding everything in as a live comprehensive system. Instead, I treat it as a tool I use on demand, not a memory layer I maintain constantly. When I have a batch of messy notes on a specific topic, I bring them together and use the AI to help me think through them. When I have a long draft I need to distill, I use it. But I stopped trying to make it the place where everything lives. That ambition was the source of most of the friction and most of the disappointment. The narrower version is less exciting as a concept. It is also actually useful, which is what I care about. The honest verdict on second brain hype. I think the second brain category is a genuine idea dressed up in too much hype. The retrieval problem is real. Most people take notes they never use. Better search over your own thinking is a legitimate improvement. But the idea that AI will maintain a living, connected, accurate extension of your memory is ahead of what these tools actually do reliably right now. The invented connections are a real problem. The system maintenance overhead is a real problem. And the hardest problem is a human one, not a technical one. If you are using the second brain to avoid thinking rather than to support it, you will get dumber and more dependent, and the notes will stop reflecting anything real about how your mind actually works. The tools are useful at the margin. They are not a replacement for the habit of sitting down and writing things out because you actually want to understand them. The best version of a second brain is not a replacement for a first one. It is a light layer on top of a practice that already exists. Build the practice first and the tool becomes genuinely useful. Skip the practice and the tool becomes a flattering mirror that shows you faults it have invented. If you want a tool that works right now, if you are curious about this, the version worth trying is narrow. Pick one category of notes that you actually use, something you actively refer back to, not the inbox where everything goes to die. Use the AI to search and summarize within that category. Check its outputs before you trust them. Do not try to build a comprehensive system on the first pass. Let the habit come before the architecture. That sequence matters because a complicated system with no habit behind it is just friction. A simple habit with a little AI support is something you will actually use. Start small, verify what it gives you, and expand only if it is genuinely saving your time every week. That is the version that survived the month for me, and that is the version I would hand to someone starting fresh. I went in expecting either a revolution or a gimmick, and what I found was more interesting than either of those. A real retrieval improvement, a real hallucination problem, a genuine friction text, and a lesson about my own thinking habits that had nothing to do with the tool at all. The second brain idea is worth taking seriously, just not at the hype level it gets sold at. Start small, stay skeptical, check the outputs, and keep writing things down because you actually thought them. If you want more honest accounts of what AI tools actually do in real use, without the hype, subscribe and follow along. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.